Do you want to learn how to mask your identity to browse inappropriate websites and stream media while at the office?
Well, we can't help you with that. But among the many IT problems we solve, Barracuda's web security solutions keep online activity clean and ensure internet bandwidth performance. Reclaim your network, like 150,000 other businesses already have. To learn more about preventing web-based threats, visit barracuda.com/web.
We're coming to you from the DraftKings.com podcasting studios. DraftKings.com, America's one-day fantasy sports site, where it's like a new season every time you play. DraftKings.com.
From ESPN's Todd Center, this is NBA Lockdown.
Welcome back to the NBA Lockdown podcast, everybody. I'm Nick Friedell. I cover the Bulls for ESPN.com. My friend Dave McMenamin covers the Cavs for ESPN.com. And, Dave, we are joined by another friend of ours who's out in Las Vegas right now who covers the Mavs for ESPN.com, Mr. Tim MacMahon. Dave, Tim, great to be with you guys. What's going on?
Well, you know, it's an absolute pleasure and an honor. Steps right in. Yeah, we have the guy we want to talk to. Everybody in the league wants to talk to this guy right now and try to pick his brain about what was one of the most wild stories in NBA history that him and Ramona Shelburne were able to capture so eloquently on ESPN.com.
Yeah, Tim, what's it like to write the story that the league is talking about?
You know, it's funny because when I first started working on it, it was still a story the league was talking about, but it was a huge success story for the Mavericks. You know, they finally landed their big fish. It was the biggest free agent catch in franchise history. And that's when I first started laying the foundation of that story. And then obviously things turned, and you know, the Mavs end up scrambling to fill out the roster their summer. And after they thought they executed Plan A to perfection, they end up with Plan Z, Zaza Pachulia. So it's been a long, strange trip for the Dallas Mavericks.
Well, let's start here because I know this is a question that you've been asked a bunch, and I know that it's on the minds of fans throughout the league, and one that is surely still having people scratch their heads all over Dallas. What the hell happened from the time that Jordan commits to Parsons and to Cuban to when he started to flip-flop, it sounds like about 48 hours later?
They left his side. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. They left his side. They did not babysit DeAndre Jordan until the moment that he signed his contract, and that left room for him to have second thoughts. It left room for the Rivers family to get in there, for him to reach out to some of his Clippers teammates. And once the Clippers got back in, it was over. It was done. Parsons couldn't really. I mean, he was able to at least get Jordan to reply to him a little bit, but wasn't able to really get to him. Mark Cuban got completely shut out, and that was that. It's funny because the Mavs' biggest concern as far as the meetings went was that Doc Rivers had the final word. He was, the Clippers had the last meeting, and they knew the relationship that DeAndre Jordan had with Doc Rivers. So that was a huge concern, and that's why Parsons and Cuban got on the plane that night, flew out to L.A., got with him the next morning, so they were able to, get that time with him and seal the deal, or so they thought. But, after that, I mean, Parsons goes to Las Vegas to celebrate his girlfriend's birthday, and I mean, it's a tough deal when you got a supermodel girlfriend. You got to tend to her needs. But, he ends up losing the love of his basketball life. Now, Tim, you mentioned Parsons, and he was such an integral part of this story, and I think you guys really chronicled his pitch and all the time he spent with DeAndre through it. But I'm curious, Dan Fagan, of course, represents both Parsons and DeAndre as the agent, and it seemed like the relationship between Jordan and Fagan has become strained. Do you think this whole fiasco situation affected Chandler Parsons' relationship with Dan Fagan as well? No, I really don't. They've still got a strong relationship. Parsons has no second thoughts about Dan Fagan. He's still planning on signing a 9-figure contract either next summer or the summer after that, depending on if he opts out of his contract. Fagan's been really good to Parsons, was able to really, he's the one who drew up the contract that got Parsons from Dallas to Houston. And, I think Fagan did his part. Matter of fact, I would say that as far as strained relationships goes, it's clearly Fagan and DeAndre Jordan and Fagan and the Los Angeles Clippers. And it's kind of a strange side note here is Relativity Sports, Fagan's agency, also represents Austin Rivers. So, there's a lot of weird dynamics here. And Doc Rivers confronted Fagan and basically said, that he felt like Fagan was more working for Mark Cuban than he was for DeAndre Jordan. I'm not sure how much truth there is to that. My understanding is he was up front throughout the process with DeAndre, saying, hey, I'm close to Cuban, but we want to do what's best for you. Felt like, and DeAndre, at least, for some time, felt like the best situation for him was coming to Dallas for a bigger role, for more of the spotlight. And, I think this is a situation where DeAndre Jordan kind of said, man, do I really want what I thought I wanted? When he hears Cuban talking about Shaq-like in 2020, maybe that was too much pressure for him. And, being the third guy with the Clippers, clearly a contender, kind of in the shadow of Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, didn't sound so bad after all to him. And I will point out, this ain't the first time DeAndre Jordan's had friction with an agent. He is on his third agent, and neither of the two previous player-agent relationships, ended really well.
Tim, let's take a step back on all this. I thought one of the most intriguing parts of the story with Ramona that you guys put together was that Parsons and Cuban actually bumped into Blake Griffin during all this. First of all, from a reporter's perspective, how do you go about building the steps that got us here? How many different times did you talk to Ramona and your sources to get to the point where you felt comfortable putting the pieces together? And then secondly, take us into a little bit the meetings between Parsons, Cuban, and Griffin.
Yeah, as far as the reporting goes, obviously Ramona is a great reporter, and she really, really kicked butt on the Clippers side of things. I thought getting John Lucas, which was her, was a really interesting angle to that story that she had. Obviously, I'm covering the Mavericks on a day-in, day-out basis, and have known, frankly, since January that DeAndre Jordan was going to be their primary target. So from the day the season ended, this is something that I've been working on and following on a day-in, day-out basis. The Blake Griffin thing, it was a completely random type of deal, Cuban and Parsons running into him. Cuban does have a place out in Manhattan Beach. He's kind of got his favorite spot out there in Manhattan Beach, what is called Shellbacks, and they started out there after taking shots, some tequila, some vodka, to celebrate DeAndre's commitment to them at his house. They head out to Manhattan Beach, head out to Shellbacks, and had a long day of celebrating, and just so happened to run into Blake Griffin. Obviously not something that they planned, and it is interesting, the Griffin-Cuban conversation, depending on who you ask, they don't remember that one exactly the same way.
Yeah, it was basically Cuban saying that Blake admitting to him that DeAndre made the right choice. And then in your story, Blake kind of saying that, no, I said that, DeAndre has to do what's best for him and makes him happy, if that's an accurate depiction.
Yeah. And, Dallas was the right choice for DeAndre Jordan if he really wanted what he said he wanted. If he wanted to be, a guy who was a face of a franchise, if he wanted to be a focal point of a team, then Dallas was the right choice for him. If he wanted to be a significant piece of a contender right now and, be in a role that's comfortable to him, then clearly staying with the Clippers was the right choice. So the Mavericks pitch was all based on, you want a bigger role. You want to be the man. You want to be in a situation where you can be a perennial all-star. Your potential isn't going to be reached individually in L.A. You come to Dallas, and they can put you in a situation where you do that. And I really think that DeAndre's his desires changed after he kind of realized what he was committing to and what was going to be expected of him in Dallas.
There was another chance meeting in your story that you guys detailed, that they were at Sunset in Los Angeles at a restaurant prior to July 1st when the free agency period opened up. And Wes Matthews and DeAndre Jordan are out to dinner, and Mark Cuban's there. I guess Chandler Parsons with that crew as well. Mark Cuban's with the Shark Tank crew across the restaurant. To me, that kind of screamed that there was some sort of tampering going on, even if it was a chance meeting. Even if Cuban comes by and says hi to the table, is that allowed? Do you understand? Or do you know how the NBA governs a situation like that?
My understanding is the NBA actually reached out to Cuban and kind of inquired about that. And basically, it's a big, popular club out there on Sunset, Bootsy Bellows, and, Parsons, DeAndre Jordan, Wes Matthews, and kind of their entourages had a couple tables on one side of the club. Cuban and the Shark Tank folks had a table on the other side of the club. And, other than kind of, saying hello, there was no interaction between Cuban and the players. So, is it a gray area? Yeah, sure, maybe. Was it pure coincidence? Wink, wink, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. But it's not like Cuban was over there at the table making his pitch and those kind of things. And what's the NBA going to say? Hey, if it's late June and you walk into a place and there's NBA free agents there, you have to leave the premises. So I'm not sure exactly how they enforce that. Like I said, it might be a gray area. Certainly, I can understand the Clippers not being thrilled with that situation, but in the NBA's eyes, it wasn't tampering, and I really don't see how the NBA could possibly, bring tampering charges on that. Because again, if you're in the same place as free agents, are you supposed to turn around and sprint out the door? I don't know what exactly is expected to Cuban in that situation.
Tim, you had a great Q&A with Chandler Parsons immediately after the decision was made. In Chandler's words, it sure seemed like, and he said as much, that he and the Mavs didn't feel like Jordan wanted to be the main man or wanted to be a franchise piece. Is that the feeling you got up and down the organization as this decision came to fruition, the flip-flop from Dallas back to the Clippers?
Yeah, it really is. And their whole pitch was based on that. I mean, that was the foundation of the entire recruiting process for the Mavericks. Is you've been a third wheel in LA, you want a bigger role, you want more spotlight, you want more responsibility. You want to reach your potential as an individual, which they told him was to be the best big man in the league, to be a perennial all-star. He's never been an all-star. To be even an MVP candidate. And it really does seem that once DeAndre had that, he reconsidered. And again, if you look at Ramona's reporting with John Lucas, it kind of read between the lines. That's kind of what came across to me with what John Lucas was saying. It was one of those things, be careful what you wish for. And when he had it, I don't think he was comfortable with that. And it's funny because, Cuban ends up getting fined for doing some interviews on July 3rd when they got the commitment from DeAndre Jordan. He told me that day, this guy's going to be our best player for years to come. He's our franchise player. He goes on the radio in Dallas and he talks. Shaq-like was the term that he used. He's talking about a 2020 guy. And in hindsight, I think seeing that stuff in print and kind of the headlines and maybe even the reaction to it nationally, which frankly there was a lot of ridicule. I think that might have worked against the Mavericks.
Tim, with you jokingly called it Plan Z, where the Mavericks have gone since then, getting Zaza, coming to terms with Darren Williams. They still retain Wes Matthews, and it looks like they're in discussions with JaVale McGee. How devastating was DeAndre's decision, or do you feel like the Mavs have responded to a point where it won't be such a major blow that it felt like at first?
Well, the Mavericks are in a really strange place because I don't think they're going to be good enough to make the playoffs. They might be able to, sneak in with one of the last seeds in the Western Conference, but I certainly can't see them making a playoff run. But I think they're going to be too good for their own good. And what I mean by that is their pick next year is only top 7 protected. They still owe the Celtics a first-round pick for Rajon Rondo. Oof. So if you want to talk about absolute worst-case scenario, the Mavericks aren't good enough to make the playoffs, aren't bad enough to have a top 7 pick, and end up sending the Celtics, whatever it is, pick 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever it might be, a lottery pick to complete the Rondo deal. And that's really that's absolute worst-case scenario here. And what they've done, Zaza is in the last year his deal, and obviously he's not a guy who you look at as a foundation of a franchise. The D. Will deal is essentially a 1-year deal. 2 years, $10 million, but the second year is a player option. We'll see where that goes. He might end up being a long-term piece in Dallas. He might not be, but clearly his prime has come and gone. What they have with DeAndre, Chandler Parsons, and Wes Matthews, they had 3 guys who were in their prime, who they really saw as being the foundation of the franchise, not just for Dirk's golden years, but beyond that. And now they're still looking for that one huge piece to go with Parsons and Wes Matthews. And the other thing is, they ended up maxing out Wes Matthews, a guy coming off a torn Achilles tendon. Man, the deal with him was we'll give you as much money as we can, depending on DeAndre. Felt like getting him on board was a big part of getting the DeAndre deal done, or they thought, the next morning. But, that was going to be, we'll give you all the cap space we have left after DeAndre, or, whatever we can if for some reason we don't get him. And that deal went from 4 years, $57 million to 4 years, $70 million, which is a crazy, crazy chunk of change for a very good player, but a 3-and-D guy, and an excellent role player who's coming off a torn Achilles tendon.
Yikes. Yikes. Tim, that is not a good picture for Mavs fans. But what I'm more curious of as we've talked through this a little bit is this. You have been in Dallas for a while. You have a solid relationship with Cuban. How pissed off was he when this started to go the way that it has now gone?
Clearly he was not thrilled. And now he's, who? I don't know who you're talking about, and kind of played off that way. But, obviously, he had a deal done. And this is something, it's not just about this summer. This was a 4-year mission for Mark Cuban to finally land a top-shelf free agent. This is something that goes all the way back to 2011, coming off the championship season, not retaining Tyson Chandler at the time. And even in this situation, making Tyson Chandler a backup plan, and Tyson obviously wasn't down with that, and agrees to a deal with the Suns on the first morning of free agency. But if they had known this was the way things were going to go, obviously they would have re-upped Tyson Chandler, and then I think we'd be talking about a solid playoff team. And I don't know if they would be legitimate championship contenders, but at least a dangerous team in the Western Conference. But I think that clearly Cuban feels disrespected here. Not just that DeAndre reversed his decision, but he still has not talked to Cuban since the day before he signed the deal with the Clippers. Cuban goes and knocks on the guy's door, sends him a text message like, "Hey, I'm here to see you." "Oh, I'm on a date." He's out eating dinner with Blake Griffin, and then completely shuts him out the entire day the next day. So I think there's some disrespect there. There's some embarrassment there, And then there's the issues that the Mavericks have trying to scramble when they thought they had the foundation in place for the foreseeable future.
Tim, do we know how Dirk feels about all this? Because we know, of course, he sacrificed money late in his career to try to give the Mavs more flexibility to bring in talent to help them try to get that second championship. And now, you know, as you mentioned, you predict them not making the playoffs. He could be like Kobe Bryant and making $23 million to not make the playoffs next year. Instead, he's trying to be like Tim Duncan. And while the Spurs look like they have a legitimate shot just as much as any other team in the league to win it next year, you think it'd be an uphill battle for the Mavericks. Do you think Dirk feels like the Mavs did everything they did and they could, and it just didn't work out? Or do you think there could be some frustration on his end?
Yeah, I mean, I'm speculating here. I haven't talked to Dirk. He's out of the country. But, you know, and he obviously did everything he could to make this happen. He took less money. He broke away from a family vacation to fly cross country to, be part of the, midnight Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific dinner with DeAndre Jordan as soon as free agency started, to be in the meeting the next day. And, my understanding is at the time, Dirk really had an impact on DeAndre and, kind of what he was saying and the way they kind of illustrated how Dirk could benefit Jordan from an offensive standpoint. I don't think Dirk's worried about the money. He's made over $200 million in his career. It's not like he's a guy who spends crazy money. And frankly, he's going to get a raise when he retires. He'll be the highest paid handshaker and hand waver in the history of the world. So it's not like this guy is sweating the money. What he's sweating is, here he is going into what might be the last couple of years of his career. It's probably going to be the last couple of years of his career. And it's really difficult to imagine the Mavericks having any kind of legitimate chance to compete for a championship and really even to make a playoff run. It's crazy. This guy, for his entire career, or for at least the majority of his career, he can't win the big one. He's a soft hero, blah, blah, blah. And that narrative got completely destroyed during that 2011 championship run where he's the lone all-star on a team that beats the two-time defending champion Lakers, that, knocks out the up-and-coming Oklahoma City Thunder, where, they've got two superstars that, delays the coronation of the super team in Miami. And then that's probably going to be the last playoff series win of Dirk's career. And that obviously doesn't sit well with him. But I don't think it's a situation where he's looking at this saying, man, I should have just gotten paid, or, I should have gone somewhere else. He just, it really bothers him, I'm sure, that they haven't been able to pull off the plan in Dallas. That, a big part of that was him taking less money and giving them that kind of cap space.
So, Tim, off that point, just to be clear, do you think there is any chance, whether it's next year, if the Mavericks really go into the tank, or in the next couple of years, that Dirk ends up anywhere else, or is he truly a Maverick for life who will go into, as you said, an even bigger role after he retires?
Yeah, I'm not sure how big his role will be after he retires, but I am certain that he'll retire as a Maverick. How big his role is, that depends on how much he wants to get his hands dirty. He might just want to raise his family and kind of be a figurehead type of guy. But as far as him finishing his career in Dallas, I would be absolutely positively stunned if it's anything but that. He has a no-trade clause. Mark Cuban obviously isn't looking to move the guy. Dirk places tremendous value on being a one-team guy. Dallas is his second home. It's the only NBA city that he's ever known. And it might be a different situation if not for that 2011 championship run. If he's the seventh leading scorer in NBA history and had that one huge gap in his resume as a legend, I could see it being different. I could see him asking, hey, can you give me a chance to chase that championship that I've never experienced? But he's experienced that. And that's not to say he's not hungry and he's not motivated and, just hell-bent on trying to get another one. But I don't think, as a matter of fact, I know that he's not a guy who wants to change uniforms just to chase another championship. That he is very comfortable and happy to be the face of the Mavericks franchise, and a guy who's only going to play for one NBA team.
Tim, I just got one more. It's kind of inside baseball type of question, but I think it was a Wednesday when the whole Clippers coup occurred, where they go to Houston and have DeAndre in his house, and Nick and I'm sure like the rest of the NBA Twitterverse is just enjoying all these emojis going back and forth and seeing it play out. But for you kind of have your feet to the fire in that situation. You're trying to report a fast-moving situation. What was that like? And also, obviously we both read, the piece that you and Ramona were able to put together at the end. But how much of it was knowing that you would be doing this bigger piece down the line, and how much of it was reacting in the moment, and just like what was it like, reaching out to editors and things like that day?
Well, I mean, that day was crazy. I got a call from Mark Stein, who broke the story that DeAndre was having second thoughts. And I got a call from him that morning, and it was like, hey, I need you to reach out to your folks, but, this is going to be on the website in about 10 minutes. And I had no idea there was any kind of second thoughts until I got that call from Stein. And then, obviously my people that I'm reaching out to are Mavericks folks, and they were pretty much in the dark. I mean, I was getting stuff like, hey, we're working on it, but really don't have anything we can tell you, because they were basically being shut out by DeAndre. So the people who knew what was going on were the people who were in the house. I mean, DeAndre shut out his agent. He shut out Cuban, and, all but shut out Parsons. Was replying to him a little bit, but Parsons wasn't getting a whole lot of feedback from DeAndre. So my sources were pretty much in the dark. So that obviously I was pretty much in the dark during that time. And it's the story. It was a huge story either way, but I was working on the story of here's the recruiting process that the Mavericks used to pull off finally landing the big fish. To this perfect execution of Plan A. Here's how it all fell in place. Obviously Parsons was a huge part of that. Just kind of the entourage recruiting effort, and the best recruiter in the NBA pulling off his summer magic. So that's the story that I was working on, and then the thing completely did a U-turn, and that ended up being a part of the story that Ramona and I wrote. But obviously, as great as the Mavericks recruiting effort was, it wasn't quite good enough because they ended up with Zaza Pachulia and not DeAndre Jordan.
Tim, Parsons has told you in the past, right, he wants to be a GM after his career is over.
Yeah. Maybe he's having second thoughts on that after this summer.
Unbelievable.
It's hard work. But no, he even before this thing went south, he even joked about being introduced as the Mavericks small forward / general manager when the starting lineups were called out next season. He might want to tap the brakes on that a little bit. But I mean, the guy is a great recruiter though. He pulled off getting Dwight Howard to Houston. I mean, he was obviously James Harden was part of the attraction, but Parsons was the lead pitch man on that, and kind of Daryl Morey's wingman on that whole deal. And this was a tougher sell. This wasn't getting Dwight to leave the Lakers after one miserable season where they didn't win a playoff game. This was getting DeAndre to leave the Clippers after a lot of success there, and to leave a franchise where they are legitimate contenders. And I mean, if not for one of the craziest collapses in NBA history, they would have been a Western Conference finalist, and who knows where things would have gone from there. And he had great relationships there. Obviously, there was a strained relationship with Chris Paul, but DeAndre and Blake Griffin are extremely tight. DeAndre and Doc Rivers. I mean, Doc's basically Jordan's NBA father figure. So this was a really tough sell for Parsons and for the Mavericks. They pulled it off. They just couldn't close the deal. So, he says he'll be back. He'll be back next summer. They'll be shooting for the top targets again next summer. But man, it would have been a lot easier to sell a guy like Kevin Durant if you've got DeAndre Jordan blocking shots and finishing at the rim and leading the NBA in rebounding instead of, hey, come here and we'll figure out the center thing as we go.
So you don't paint the prettiest picture for the Mavs right now, Mr. McMahon, but there is one good thing for Mark Cuban at this point. I have never heard about cyber dust more in my entire life than in the last 2 weeks. Could you explain to all of us who don't quite understand the whole process of cyber dust?
Spider dust.
Spider dust. Exactly what the hell it is, because in the last couple weeks, when Cuban wanted to make some kind of big statement, it was always a reference to cyber dust, and I've seen him tweet about it a lot. But what is it?
It's one of his business babies, and essentially what it is, it's text messages that disappear. Now, you kind of like Twitter,
kind of like commitments.
Follow you on. Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, DeAndre Jordan might as well have cyber dusted his commitment to Mavericks. But it's kind of like Twitter. People can follow you on there, and you can send out what's called blasts, where all your followers see it, and that's what whenever Cuban wants to make a statement, he sends out cyber dust blasts, and so that's where you see a lot of times we'll be quoting Cuban on cyber dust as that, and it's the way you can get a hold of Mark Cuban. Used to be, you email the guy and he'd reply, and obviously that's pretty unique for an NBA owner or an owner of any major sports teams. But now, you just hit him up on cyber dust, and the guy replies. He responds. That's how you get a hold of him. So, you end up quoting Mark Cuban via his messaging app, Cyberdust, and hey, if nothing else, they didn't get their big fish, but this has been a great marketing campaign for one of Cuban's companies.
Nick, we got to get Cyberdust to sponsor the podcast.
There you go. Yeah,
I think that's the synergy move to make here.
Well, there's no question, and Tim will be able to help us a little bit. We can get Cuban on. Tim, you can come back and we can say, Mark, look, we know the summer didn't work out the way you wanted it to, but Cyberdust got a lot of play, and could you throw a couple bucks our way to throw a sponsorship on here? You think he'd be up for that?
I don't know if he'd be up for the sponsorship, but one thing I have found about Cuban, the best way, like I do radio in Dallas a lot, the best way to get him on the radio is, you can make your Cyberdust pitch and then we'll talk basketball. So he always seems down to promote his company.
Well, we'll save that for one in the future. Right now, let's take a break here on the NBA Lockdown podcast. When we come back, Tim has been out in Las Vegas. He'll tell us a little bit about what he's seen in Summer League, and we'll get his thoughts on not only where the Mavericks go from here, as we touched on a little bit, but where the league is going in the last couple weeks since this Jordan move. Keep it locked here on ESPN.com.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Welcome back to the NBA Lockdown podcast, everybody. I'm Nick Friedell. I cover the Bulls for ESPN.com. My friend Dave McMenamin covers the Cavs for ESPN.com. And we are with another friend of ours, Tim MacMahon. He's been all over the DeAndre Jordan story. He covers the Mavs for ESPN.com. And, Tim, you've been out in Las Vegas the past few days, not only to cover the aftermath of DeAndre's decision, but you've seen some other guys, some of the other high draft picks. Who has stood out to you in what you've been able to watch the last few days?
Yeah, I think Kristaps Porzingis is one of the more interesting guys out here. And obviously there was a lot of it was a pretty controversial pick for the Knicks at number 4. It's an unknown. It's the Knicks gambling on a high upside European guy who, I don't think Knicks fans were real thrilled about that. But there were Porzingis chants by Knicks fans at the Las Vegas Summer League, and he's shown some things. If you look at his numbers, it's not like he's wowing you with with production. It's not like he's out here dropping 30 points a game or anything like that. But for a 19-year-old kid who I seriously doubt can grow a mustache, he's he's shown some things. I mean, he's shown some real toughness. Saw him yesterday against Jahlil Okafor, and obviously Okafor. I mean, you talk about a big, strong ox on the low block, and a guy who's really got some polish in his low post game. Porzingis, despite giving up a lot of weight and a lot of muscle, I thought really held his own in that matchup on the defensive end. And like I said, the Knicks fans. I mean, there was one play I remember where Okafor is kind of trying to bully Porzingis on the block and makes his move and ends up getting called for an offensive foul. And the Knicks fans in the crowd went absolutely crazy, because Porzingis, there's still that soft Euro stereotype. I don't think that stereotype's going to, that's not something that you're going to hear a lot about this guy. He's got some toughness to him.
Yeah, Tim, I watched the Knicks play the Lakers on NBA TV, and one play in particular stood out for me.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Over the home run derby, I guess. I'm willing to watch bad basketball over exciting exhibition baseball, but Porzingis got the ball in the block. He had a smaller Laker. I'm not sure. Maybe it was their second-round draft pick out of Stanford, Brown. He sealed him, kind of like went into him with his right shoulder, and then finished with his left hand. It was so much skill on one play, and to me, like, that was all I needed to see out of that game. I was like, if he's going to be capable of doing plays like that, he's going to be able to find a place in this league. Is there anything else about his game, getting to see him up close? I know Brian Windhorst said that people are saying that the guy might be 7'2", 7'3", when you see him up close and personal. That has stood out about you?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of skill to him. I mean, the length is, I mean, it's really crazy. And he's like I said, he's such a baby-faced guy. And, you see him up close, he's long and he's lanky. Really looks like he's got a frame that's going to fill out with the skill, with the toughness that I talked about. I mean, he's a really intriguing prospect. And I don't know how effective he's going to be as a rookie, as a teenage rookie. But hey, Dirk didn't exactly have a great rookie year, and I think, the Mavs are pretty happy that they ended up getting him on draft night. I do think Porzingis is going to be a guy who, over the next 15 years or so, is going to have a great career. I'm just not sure that that he's going to be part of making the Knicks much better right away. I don't know if they can make that jump into, let's be honest, from being absolutely awful to being mediocre. And it's interesting hearing Phil Jackson talk about, the Knicks need to win before they can become a destination for marquee free agents. I mean, he admitted, hey, Rick Monroe made a good decision picking the Milwaukee Bucks over coming to Madison Square Garden, over coming to one of the NBA's flagship franchises, because the Bucks have a much better roster in place right now, and a lot of young talent that can really complement him. And he basically admitted free agency went pretty much exactly how the Knicks thought, because they didn't think, they weren't confident that they were going to be able to land one of the big names in free agency, because they didn't think it was an attractive enough situation. So they get Robin Lopez, hoping he can kind of be a defensive anchor, to get Aaron Aflalo, hoping he can be kind of a solid veteran presence. They make some lesser moves, Kyle O'Quinn, Derek Williams, and they're trying to take a jump from one of the worst teams in the league to kind of that middle ground, and then if you can get there, then maybe New York's obviously you've got the glitz and the glamour of the franchise. Obviously people are going to be intrigued by playing in New York and the mystique and all that, but not when they're coming off of a 17-win season.
Tim, the guy drafted just ahead of Porzingis at number 3, Jahlil Okafor, he got his feet wet in that Utah Summer League for a couple days. Have you gotten a chance to see him in Vegas, and if so, what are your initial impressions?
Yeah, and obviously he's a guy who you're much more familiar with because, I don't watch a ton of college basketball, but, Duke does make a championship run, and, you see him in March Madness, and you kind of, know what that guy is. I mean, he's a big, strong, polished, low-post player, which makes him unique. I mean, how many guys are there like that in the NBA today when it's become a league where, I mean, centers hardly even played in the finals this year, So he's a unique guy in that respect. Obviously comes into the league, despite being a one-and-done guy in college, with an NBA body, a frame where he's going to be able to go in there and bang and compete right away. And I think he'll be a guy who puts up numbers for the Sixers. It wouldn't surprise me if he's a double-double guy, putting up 16, plus points as a rookie. Obviously, the question with him is, can he play defense, and will he be exposed on that end of the floor?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Okafor is, as you mentioned, if he's putting up those numbers and the Sixers are playing that way, but when they actually do mature as a team and the rest of the league is playing an up-and-down kind of positionless basketball, where's his role? I mean, and that's, the value of a number 3 pick. The only thing that kind of concerns me is, maybe the Sixers, that means that they're going to all of a sudden become another Memphis-type team, one of the few teams that actually go with that strategy of playing big men. But to me, everything that Hinkie has done so far has been, trying to stay on top of the trends of the league. So it's just a weird pick for me. I understand that Okafor can play. Has some polish to his game, but another thing, what happens when Embiid's healthy next season? Then you have Nerlens, Okafor, and Embiid. So I don't know. I'm still confused by that pick.
Well, but it's a value pick. I mean, he was clearly the best player on the board, and I think if you're the Sixers, you're not expecting to win a championship next year or anytime in the near future. So you get the best value that's there, and then kind of let the pieces fall where they may. And, they hope, obviously, that Embiid gets healthy, and somebody's going to get traded, whether it's Nerlens Noel or Embiid or Okafor. I mean, they're not going to have 3 centers for the long haul that were all top, 3 picks, I believe. One of those guys will end up getting traded, if not a couple of them. But, I mean, I think people probably, I'm sure the Sixers probably even expected that the Lakers would take Okafor, and, they'd end up with D'Angelo Russell. But when the Lakers go Russell, do you take the guy who's clearly the best player on the board there and kind of figure out how things fit later and, have that value and, that trade chip? Or, do you reach for a guy who is, in your estimation, not nearly as good a player? I think they make the right move, and then it's just a matter of, what are they able to, what are they able to do from here? What are they able to do? Whether, maybe it's next summer, maybe it's before this trade deadline or even next trade deadline. What are they able to turn this into? Because obviously you're not going to have 3 top 3 pick centers on your roster for, a long haul here.
Tim, you mentioned the Lakers with Russell. They also are going with Julius Randle, who was hurt all of last season. As far as Russell goes, there's always going to be a difference of opinion from some fans. Should have taken a big man in Okafor. What have you seen from Russell so far in terms of how his game on the college level can translate to the NBA?
Yeah, and you got to be real careful knee-jerking about what you see in summer league, because let's be honest, this is like glorified AAU basketball.
Yeah.
These guys don't. It's not like they've had a whole training camp and they basically get a little mini camp and then you throw them out there, and it's not the most organized basketball. But he's looked rough, man. I mean, the Lakers game that I saw where they lose to the Knicks, 76-66. My eyes still hurt from it. The Lakers scored 5 points in the first quarter. They get booed. They get booed in summer league. There was a huge crowd here because this is, as Derek Fisher said, this is LA East out in Vegas. And basically the whole lower bowl of the Thomas & Mack Center was filled up with a lot of Lakers fans, and they're booing them. And, man, Russell had as many turnovers as they did points in that game. So, again, got to be careful knee-jerking based on what you see in summer league basketball. But I can't sit here and tell you that he looked great.
Yeah, the Lakers also have the question mark with Julius Randle, and I was encouraged the reports coming out of his rehab process in L.A. that he was able to kind of work on his game in terms of transitioning into more of a bruising three, like a P.J. Tucker type, put the ball on the floor and be able to shoot a little bit. He struggled a little bit as well. What did you think seeing him up close?
Yeah, he looks like a guy who's chipping off a year of rust, which obviously he is, missing all but, a few minutes of the season and coming off of that broken leg. But I tell you what, though, he's pretty impressive as far as being a guy who can face up and put the ball on the floor and attack the basket. And, he hadn't always been able to finish, but there's been a lot of times where, he's had these drives that the crowd's oohing and on, and then he's just not able to finish the rim. He looks rusty there. But, I think Randall's going to be a player. I think he's going to be a nice piece for the Lakers. And, again, maybe he's a trade chip and he ends up somewhere else. But I think Julius Randle has something. And even though he's not necessarily putting up great numbers here, the quickness, the athleticism, the ability to handle the ball at his size is pretty impressive.
Guys, to Tim's point on you never can trust Summer League too much, I feel like it's my duty to serve a public service announcement and remind everyone that I was there the night LeBron James made his professional debut for Cleveland. The game was at the Orlando Arena, and Britton Johnson of the University of Utah fame absolutely threw one down on LeBron that night. And LeBron did not look very good. I've seen Derrick Rose struggle. I've seen Marcus Teague play well in the Summer League. You never know for sure. So, Tim, that point is very well taken on Russell. And clearly it's too early to judge, but the initial reports on Russell and several other guys up to this point haven't been very good.
Yeah, and, like you said, be careful making knee-jerk reactions to Summer League. Speaking of guys who have dunked on LeBron, you remember the whole Jordan Crawford dunk controversy, and the video was being confiscated by LeBron's crew. Jordan Crawford's on the Mavericks Summer League team, and it looks like his game is made to go back to China.
He had a little bit of a run with the Warriors there, right? Oh, poor guy.
He had a run with the Warriors. Never a shot that he didn't like. A lot of them don't go in the basket.
Yeah, I've heard that about your game too, Tim. So,
well,
I just want to know.
No. I'm not a gunner. At
like
my
Dave.
advanced age and limited athleticism, I have been called the Kendrick Perkins of pickup basketball, and that is not intended as a compliment to me. Not much lateral movement, no ups. Elbows still work though.
Well, Nick's nickname is Nick the Pick on the court, so we got a motley crew here. I got two words.
We need to get a pickup game going in Bristol for our NBA preseason meeting.
I think that's
I'm putting you guys in charge of that. And McMenamin, I know you're a very proud gunner, so I'm putting you in charge of that.
I'll get on that. Before we go, I got two words for you, Tim, to get through those Vegas mornings. Coconut water. It's a good trick. Gets you hydrated.
That
sounds like throughout the day.
Outstanding advice.
Yeah, Tim. So everybody's aware for a journalist who does cover Summer League, as you are lucky enough to do right now. What is it like being out in Las Vegas after the games end for the day?
Well, I mean, my hotel suite is very nice, and bed's comfortable, and I'm in bed by midnight every night. I really don't know what you guys might be referring to.
I love it. Well, I can just speak for Dave and I. We spent plenty of nights in hotels playing blackjack till 3-4 in the morning. So that's part of it, and then watching basketball all day. So that's a good part.
My problem is I'm poor and I'm cheap. I've got kids that spend all my money, so I don't have a whole. It'd be nice to win, but I'm afraid to lose. I'm not a guy who's going to stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning playing blackjack. That's for sure.
It's a smart man.
Scared money don't make none, man. Scared money don't make none.
Yeah, but it doesn't lose any either.
There you go. Well, Tim, we can't thank you enough for taking some time out. We know you're busy out there, and everybody wants a piece of you, given the great job you did on that DeAndre story and getting to talk to Cuban and Chandler Parsons. So keep it rolling out there in Vegas.
Appreciate it, fellas.
Thanks for listening to NBA Lockdown on ESPN Radio. For more great podcasts, check out the Pod Center page on ESPNradio.com.